That could preach by itself, but I already prepared something, so I might as well talk. Is that all right? All right, good. We're looking at stories, real stories from real people, people that you see on stage, people that you see in the hallway, people that you might be sitting next to right now, of real life change because of Jesus. Not only are we listening and hearing stories from people that you know, but we're also taking a look at God's story, taking a look at some stories from real people with real life change, all because of Jesus that we find in his word. Last week we talked to the woman at the well, and this week we get another person that we're going to look at their story and walk through it and see if there's anything we can learn from it. And we again don't know their name. This man is known as the man born blind. This is his story. Check it out. John chapter 9 says this. As Jesus was walking along, he saw a man who had been blind from birth. Rabbi, his disciples asked him, why was this man born blind? Was it because of his own sins or his parents' sins? Now, this is a very interesting question. It's actually a pretty good question. In this time and day, they were basically saying, this thing has happened to this man. It's not a good thing. Whose fault is it? We want to know why this happened. So they're basically asking, why did bad things happen? Why does this specific bad thing happen? And back in this day, there was a theory that you could sin in the womb, and it would affect your life when you were born. So that's why I said, was it his fault? Like, is this guy at fault? Is it something he did? Or there was a thought that your sin as a parent could get passed on to your kid and affect them. Pretty interesting question. You and I ask similar questions today. Like, have you ever asked, why did that illness or sickness affect my loved one? Have you ever asked, why evil? All right, let's try this. Nod your head if I ask a question. Yes, this means yes. This means no. Yes, no. All right, good. Let's make sure you're listening. Okay, have you ever asked the question, why evil? Okay, most of us. Well, I didn't say you could talk. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. Why evil? We all ask that question. Now, we understand that sometimes bad things happen because there are bad people making bad choices, right? Las Vegas, bad thing that happened. Evil because someone chose to do wrong. Now, God has given us the ability to choose, but someone chose to do a bad thing and bad results happen. So we know that sometimes it's because there's evil in this world and people make bad decisions. We also know that sometimes bad things happen because we make bad decisions. We make a decision, we reap the consequences. If I told you that I lost my job, first you would say, why are you still on the stage? But second, you might say, oh man, that's a terrible thing that happened. Why? Why did that happen? And then I said, well, I stole some money from the church. No big deal. You'd be like, wait, no, that's not terrible. Of course you lost your job. Like, you did something wrong, you reap consequences, right? That makes sense? But sometimes there's bad things that happen. We ask why, and we never get the real answer. We are people that want to know the why behind the what, so we say often to God. Well, let me say, say often to God, why? Why did you let this happen? Why did you allow that to happen? Why am I going through this? So we question God because we want to know the answers, and sometimes we never get the reason why. But I'm here to tell you that even during those difficult times, I want you to understand something. Maybe you're sitting through that right now, and in your mind for the past week, month, year, you've been doing a lot of why. Why, God? Why is it you allow that to happen? Why is that okay? Why did my loved one die? Why did a hurricane rip across a land and take out people's homes and lives? And why, God? If you're asking that today, I just want to assure you this, that God is still a good God, even when bad things happen. That God is still faithful, even when you can't see the why behind the what. As the song said today, never once will you ever walk alone. That's a true statement. Now, that doesn't make things easier. That just makes it possible to get through, knowing that God is with you. That doesn't take away the hurt or the pain that you're feeling. That just may make the hurt, you may be able to handle it, or maybe the pain, you may be able to bear it, because you know that God is always with you during the difficult time. Now, this was a situation that the disciples found themselves in. They look at a man, they say, this is a bad thing. Why did it happen? But I want you to see what Jesus does. Let's see how he answers this. It was not because of his sins or his parents' sins, Jesus answered. This happens so the power of God could be seen in him. Now, Jesus doesn't necessarily give us the reason why, but he gives us a purpose for. You see that? He doesn't say this happened because his parents or him. He doesn't say the why, what caused it to happen, but he does say that there is a purpose that God can bring out of this difficult situation. He says the purpose is that God's power or God's mighty work would be displayed in this man's life. And I want you to know that sometimes God does that in our life too. Sometimes we don't get the why behind the what. We never get the answer to the reason why this bad thing is happening in our life. But God can step into our story and he can do something powerful and he can bring purpose out of our pain and bring purpose out of a situation, even though we never get the why behind what happened. And that's what happened here. He says, the purpose is that God would display his power, his mighty work in this man's life. Romans 8:28, I've said it before, maybe you know this. If you're going through something, this is a verse for you. It says that we know that God works all things. Everybody say all. All. Say things. Say good. Bad. Everything. Don't say that one. God works all things together for the good, not the happiness, not for our comfort, but for our good, is God defines good. Of those that love him and are called according to his purpose, not our purpose. So God can take the bad things in life. He can take the things that we look at and say, why did this happen? And he can work some things together for good. Now again, that verse isn't to tell you that what you're going through is not painful. It's just to tell you that sometimes God might allow certain things to happen, and you need to understand that behind the scenes, God is working this together for some sort of good that you may never know right now, that you may not feel right now, but he's working it together for the good of those that love him, according to his will and his purpose. And that's exactly what's happening here right now. So now we're going to see what kind of power is displayed. What is God doing? Let's see. So it says then, Jesus, he spit. Oh, I thought that'd sound cooler. I don't know how to spit. I don't know. We need like ding, like the old joke. You guys know that? It's like a circus trick. Anyway, he spit on the ground and he made mud with saliva and he spread the mud over the blind man's eyes and he told him, go wash yourself in the pool of Siloam. We'll say Siloam, means sent. So the man went and washed and came back seeing. Now, I want to take a pause for a second. What we're going to do, in case you missed it, we're just going to walk through this story and I'm going to pull out some cool things that I think you should hear. All right, is that okay? Like just along the way. And this one doesn't, I think this is just kind of cool. This is just for me. This is my little speech, okay, my little part of the story. This is kind of a cool thing that Jesus does that you may never catch. Okay, Jesus, he could have just done what? Open your eyes, and the man could have seen, right? Jesus could have done that. Instead, he spits, he takes and makes mud, rubs it on the man's eyes, and then also makes the man go and do something in the story. Did you see that? Okay, let me give you a little background. So this is from the book of John. John's a letter, and it's one of the Gospels. We say Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John are all Gospels. Matthew, Mark, and Luke, all very similar, have very similar stories, but John's a little different. He's a little odd, but we like him still. And so John, his main theme, if someone said, what is the purpose of this letter? His main theme is to help prove that Jesus is in fact God. It's to help us see Jesus as the divine one, as the Messiah, as the Son of God. So all throughout the book of John, you're seeing these stories, or you're seeing this picture that Jesus actually is in fact divine. He's God. It starts out by saying, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God, right? And then the Word became flesh. It's saying that he was God. Jesus is the Word, and he became flesh. And so it's trying to prove Jesus' divinity to us. That's why I think this story is here. And this is where I want to see the connection. Did you see what he did? He used dirt to make something to bring about sight. Now, pay attention to your scripture. And you know back in the way day, the Genesis, the beginning, right? God, he formed man out of dirt. Out of the dust of the ground, out of the dust of the earth, God took man and he said, I'm going to create this and shape this and form man. Then it says he breathed life into the man and he became a living soul. So I think what Jesus is doing, those people around him are seeing, he uses the dirt and a little bit of spit, which I just think is interesting and funny. And I'm like, what? Why did he do that? Is it cool? He uses dirt and spit to kind of connect him and God. He's trying to say, look, I am God, I am the Son of God. There's some divinity here. Maybe you didn't think that was as cool as I did, but I was like, oh, that's a pretty cool part of the story that I just normally look past and say, why did Jesus spit? That's gross. I wouldn't want him to rub his spit on my eyes. But Jesus was saying, look, just as God created man out of the dust of the earth, I'm going to create sight out of the ground. Almost like he was saying, you're missing something. Here, let me go back to the dirt where you were formed, and let me put it back on you. It's cooler in my head, so. Guess you guys probably already knew that. You're way smarter than me. And I'm like, oh, God, thank you for revealing something I've never learned before. And you're like, okay, keep moving. So let's keep moving. This is why we're getting to this story is what happens next. Because this series is all about this is my story. And the point is that your story needs to impact people around you. So watch how his story impacts people around him. Here's what happens next. It says his neighbors and others who knew him as a blind beggar asked each other, isn't this the man who used to sit and beg? Some said he was. Others said, no, he just looks like him. But the beggar kept saying, yes, I am the same one. They asked him, who healed you and what happened? So he tells them. The man they called Jesus made mud and spread it over my eyes and told me, go to the pool of Siloam and wash yourself. So I went and washed. Now I can see. Now there's two really powerful lines in this story, in my opinion. And one of them is right here. It says, isn't this the man that used to? Everybody say, ooh. I'll tell you why. Isn't this the man that used to? Jesus steps into this man's story. Radically transforms his life, right? Blind from birth, now he can see. Pretty big deal. Would you agree? That's a pretty big change in this man's life. Others around him, his neighbors and other people that knew him before, saw the change and said, isn't that the man that used to? Last week we learned that your story is important. Your story matters, and your story was never meant to be kept private. It was meant to be shared with those around you. You need to share your story. But today I want you to know that not only do you need to share your story, but you need to show your story. You need to let the change that Jesus is making in your life be seen by other people. Where people could look at you that knew you before Jesus, took a hold of your life, and they can say, isn't that the one that used to? Anybody got family members that knew them before Jesus? Before Jesus really took over your life, like your brother and sister and your mother and maybe your father, they knew the pre-Christ, the before Jesus. Did anybody got those people in their life? What if they could say, isn't that my brother who used to? Man, he used to struggle with anger. He used to be so prideful. He used to have such a issue in this area of his life, but look at the change in his life. Isn't that the man who used to? For me, I think one of the greatest things that anyone could ever say about me would be, man, there's just something about that guy. Now, I didn't say there's just something really weird about that guy. Everybody says that about me. But what if they were to say there's just something about him? What if when you're at work, their coworkers are just like, there's just that guy. That guy. There's just something about that guy. When everyone else is getting angry at the situation and hating the boss, that guy, there's that guy. He's got love and grace and compassion. There's just something about that guy. Wouldn't it be great if your siblings that knew you before said, man, there's just something about her. There's just something about her. Where you let the change that Jesus is making in your heart impact those around you. See, there's supposed to be a change. Jesus said when he steps into our life and we put our faith and trust in Christ, that the old is gone. Behold, there is everything he is making new. That when you begin to let Jesus transform you, it's not always a boom, just like this. You go from being blind to seeing. But daily, you're becoming more and more like Christ. And if you're becoming more like Christ, that means you're becoming less and less like you and who you once were. And sometimes we hide it. Sometimes we hide it. But we were meant to show our story. We were meant to let it be seen. Now, let's just keep going and let's see what happens. So they don't believe him. They're like, that can't be true. You weren't blind before. So they take him to the Pharisees because they're like, well, the Pharisees are the religious people. They can figure out what happened here. So they take him to the Pharisees. They took the man who had been born blind to the Pharisees because it was on the Sabbath that Jesus had made the mud and healed the man. So the Pharisees asked the man all about it. So he tells them, he put the mud over my eyes, and when I washed it away, I could see. Some of the Pharisees said, this Jesus man, he's not from God, for he is working on the Sabbath. But others said, how could an ordinary sinner do such miraculous signs? So there was deep division of opinion among them. So they didn't know what to do. So the Pharisees again questioned the man who had been blind and demanded, what's your opinion about this man that healed you? He says, well, I think he must be a prophet. Deep division. Some people say, Jesus, not a good guy because he broke our religious laws. if he was a godly man and of God, he would not have healed on the Sabbath. Now, I just think this is interesting as I was studying. Just know this. He didn't just break the Sabbath law. He trampled all over it. Okay, he's like, oh, you can't work on the Sabbath? Watch what he did. He heals a man on the Sabbath, and the only time you could heal a man is if you had to save their life. So this was not a life-threatening injury, correct? Just blindness. So he breaks the law by healing the man. Then he spits. Can't do that. It's the Sabbath. You're not supposed to do any work. So he spits on the Sabbath. Then he makes mud out of the dirt and the spit. You can't do that. That's working. On top of that, depending on where they're at outside the temple right now, he makes the man go and walk to the pool. And he could have been longer than the amount of steps that he was supposed to take. So Jesus didn't just break the Sabbath. Jesus is like, oh, Sabbath? Okay. A little bit. Now, he's not dissing the Sabbath, but look what he does. And everyone around says, he can't be a godly man because he broke our religious laws. But then others are like, well, but he did heal a dude. Like, that's pretty cool. So, I'm not really sure. He might be from God. So they're confused, and they said, what do you think, dude? And he says, it's got to be at least a prophet, right? And they're like, we don't like that answer. Go get your parents. Now, they call him a man the whole time. And we don't exactly know how old he is, but we know he's at least 13, so they said, go get your parents. So watch what happens. This is cool. So they go to his parents. Is this your son? Was he born blind? How can he see now? So his parents replied, we know this is our son, that he was born blind, but we don't know how he can see or who healed him. Ask him. He's old enough to speak for himself. His parents said this because they were afraid of the Jewish leaders who had announced that if anyone says Jesus was the Messiah, he would be expelled from the synagogue. That's why they said, he is old enough, ask him. Fear. So he says he's of age, which that's why we know he's at least 13. So he's of age, but he's probably older than that. I'm guessing he's older than that. But they said, go ask him. He's of age. He can figure it out. And they did this because they were afraid. See, they let fear keep them from doing what every parent would have done in this situation. And you know what that would be? A happy dance. Your son, you know what a happy dance is? You ever got a happy dance? That's all I got. A happy dance. If your son, who was born blind and lived at least 13 years of his life, can now see you, he sees you, he's looking up, he says, Mom, that's you, you're so beautiful. Dad, you're my dad. Just think about that for a moment. What should they have been doing? They should have been praising God. They should have been dancing. They should have been singing. This should have been a time for celebration and worship. But instead they're like, he's old enough. Ask him what happened. Because they're scared. They let fear keep them from celebrating what God has done. They let fear keep them from showing the change that has been made in their son's life. They were afraid. And sometimes you and sometimes we are afraid to let our life be seen by other people. We fear what people at work may say if they just knew that we were a little bit different. We fear what our family might think if we were to tell them, the reason that I'm different, the reason that I've changed is all because of Jesus. We're afraid of what people may say about us. We're afraid of what people may think. And just like the parents in the story, we let fear keep us from showing our story. And all I want to do today, the only thing I have on the agenda, is to encourage you and inspire you to not be afraid to show your story to people. It needs to be shared. You need to actually tell people what God is doing in your life, but you need to let them see the difference. Because there is a difference, but we hide it. Well, if they knew that, what would they think of me? So Jesus, let someone else tell them about Jesus. Let the pastor do it. That wasn't even funny. Sad. It's his job. We pay that guy. He can talk about Jesus. Fear. Watch the guy. Not this man. He will not let fear keep him. Watch it. He keeps going. So for a second time, they call in the man that had been blind and told him, God should get the glory for this because we know that this man, Jesus, is a sinner. He said, look, I don't know whether he's a sinner. The man replied, but I know this. I was blind, and now I can see. He said, I'm not afraid because something incredible has happened in my life. I once was blind, but now I can see. If you want to hear the second best line in this whole thing, it was there right there. Did you hear it? Is it up there? I don't know. Oh, I should have put it in bold letters. That's my fault. Maybe you didn't get it. All I know is this. I once was blind, but now I can see. He can't explain everything there is to know about Jesus. Is he a sinner? I don't know. Is he a prophet? I think so. I can't tell you, is he part of the Trinity? I can't tell you what translation would be best for you to read on a Sunday morning. All I can tell you is this. I was once blind, but now I can see. I used to be, but now I am. And it's all because of Jesus. So all I can tell you is that I was blind and now I can see. You think what you want about Jesus, but all I can say is I was blind and now I can see. I want you to see there's a change in my life. You need to see it. And then he says, you know what? I can do more than that. Let me get bolder. Watch. Oh man, I get so excited. Oh, watch. He gets bolder. But what did he do, they ask, and how did he heal you? Look, I told you once and you didn't listen. Why do you want to hear it again? You want to become his disciples too, don't you? Little smart Alec. He probably was only 16 or 17. You hear that? Well, you want to be his disciples too? Yeah, sorry, that's what I think. He's about 17 and a half right there. It's the best age. If you're 17 and a half, it's a great age. Like, I love it. I'm just saying, he was a smart Alec. Do you want to be his disciples too? So they cursed him and said, you are his disciple, but we are disciples of Moses. We know that God spoke to Moses, but we don't even know where this man comes from. He replies, why, that's very strange. He healed my eyes, and yet you don't know where he comes from. We know that God doesn't listen to sinners, but he is ready to hear those who worship him and do his will. And ever since the world began, no one has been able to open the eyes of someone born blind. So if this man were not from God, he couldn't have done it. Well, you were born a total sinner, they answered. So you're trying to teach us? So then they threw him out of the synagogue. So we can't handle what you have to say. Get out of here. 17-year-old brat. Got time for you? You see what he did? He made an argument. It's a very, very sound argument. Only God can do incredible, miraculous things like this. This man Jesus did an incredible, miraculous thing like this. Therefore, this man Jesus must be from Man, he went from just saying, all I can tell you is I was blind, but now I can see, to saying, wait, let me tell you something. You're the religious people, but you can't figure out where this man's from? Well, let me tell you for a moment. The same is true in our life. I can tell you this. Jesus has made a miraculous difference in the person that I am. I should be more this, but I am not, I'm this. And it's all because of Jesus. So say what you want about him. I can't explain everything there is to know, but I can show you my life. I'm not scared of you. Throw me out. Because I was blind, but now I can see. Kick me out of here. I don't care. I met a man named Jesus, and he has transformed my life, and I would never go back to how it once was. Watch how it ends. When Jesus heard what had happened, he found the man. I think it's interesting. Jesus heals the man and then leaves. You got this, buddy. And he did, right? He had it. But Jesus comes back. He looks at the man and he asks him, do you believe in the Son of Man? Now, he's asking, do you believe in Jesus? Do you believe in the Messiah? Do you believe in the Son of God? Do you believe in the Son of Man? The man says, who is he, sir? I want to believe in him. Look what Jesus does. Just like last week with the woman at the well. He says, you have seen him. Did you catch that? He was blind, but now he could see Jesus. You have seen him. He's never seen Jesus before. Did you know this? He was blind last time he saw Jesus. Jesus said, you got to go to the place and you got to wash. So he doesn't even know who Jesus is, but he hears his voice. Do you believe in the Son of Man? Yeah, I believe. Oh, I want to. Who is he? He says, you have seen him. He's speaking to you now. So he says, yes, Lord. I believe. And then he worships Jesus. I want to know who he is. I want what happened in that guy's life to happen in my life. I want radical transformation all because of Jesus. I want to know who he is. Show me. Who is he? And Jesus says, I'm he. Right here. You're speaking to him. I'm the one you've been waiting for. I am the Messiah. I can radically transform your life if you will let me. And the same question that Jesus asked that man, I want to ask you today. Do you believe in Jesus? Heads aren't nodding anymore. That's okay. I ain't going to call you out. But do you believe in Jesus? Maybe your answer is, I want to. I want to. Before, I'm not sure about this guy, but now I am. I want to believe in this Jesus. I want to believe in him. I want the same change that happened in that man. I want that in my life. I want to show you one last piece of this story. Look. Jesus did all the work, correct? Jesus gets all the glory. Jesus is the one who can do miracles. Jesus is the one who can do impossible things in your life. However, this man played a small part. Jesus said, he did the thing, rubbed the mud, spit all over his face. Then he said, go and wash. And what this man had to do is he had to believe that the work that Jesus did was enough. And then he had to obey. And he went and he washed. So today, if you're saying, I want to believe, who is this Jesus? I think the response needs to be the same. Do you believe that what Jesus did on the cross is enough? Here's the work that he did in your life. The Bible says that for God so loved the world that he sent his only son, Jesus, to die on the cross for your sin. And it says whoever, that means you. That means anybody. That means everybody. Whoever believes in him will not perish, but have everlasting life. It takes the question to be answered. Yes, I believe in Jesus. Do you believe? And if you do, trust him and obey. Go get rid of all this stuff that is not of Jesus. Cleanse yourself from all that stuff. The Bible says we need to turn from our sin, but we get to turn to Jesus. So you maybe have to go and wash. You believe what Jesus did was enough. Trust him. And for the other people in the room that says, I believe in Jesus and I have for a long time, you need to show change that has occurred in your life to those around you. Don't be afraid. Don't let fear keep you from showing that Jesus is doing something in your heart and in your life. Your story is not my story. It's your story. And you're the only person that can show the change that is happening in your life. Don't just share it. You need to show it. Let people see the difference that God has made in your life and is making in your life. Do not let fear keep you. Do not let it hold you back. Do not let it hinder you. But let Jesus work in your life and let him make you more and more like him. And then let people see it. The man born blind said this, yes, Lord, I believe. And then it said he worshiped Jesus. So would you stand to your feet because we're going to worship Jesus. Yes, Lord, I believe. Then he worshiped Jesus. Let me pray. Lord, I love you. We love you. We love you for all that you've done in our life and all that you're doing in our hearts. Lord, don't let fear hinder any one of us. Don't let it keep us back from showing the fact that you are making a difference in our life every single day. Don't let us hinder that difference that you're making. Let us share our story. And let us show our story. And you use it so that your power can be displayed in us and through us. We may not know the why. Why do we have to go through this? Why do I have to deal with this? Why is this difficult problem happening in my life? We may not ever know the reason why, but we know that you can take it and you can use it for your glory, for your purpose. We ask that in your name, in the name of Jesus.